Welcome to Resilience Squadron, where we share and discuss the adventures, challenges, and representation of disabled and chronically ill fans across the Star Wars universe. Welcome to Resilience Squadron. I'm Greg.
And I'm Jack.
And it's celebration time. Star Wars Celebration is taking place this year on May 26th through 29th in Anaheim, California. And a lot of fans are making their plans now for what they intend to do there and figuring out what to expect. But we're going to be talking specifically about a lot of the accommodations that are expected to be in place for people with disabilities, chronic illnesses, and any other needs in that kind of large convention event setting. You know, it's been a long time since there's been a celebration, since this one was postponed from 2020 due to COVID. So not only is it a big deal for fans, but for many, it's the first time in a long time, or even ever for some people, to be getting together in this large of a gathering in this big of a space. And we want to do what we can to make sure the event is enjoyable by everyone.
Right.
So our goal is to provide as much information as we can at this time, get some insight from people who have a lot more knowledge about these accommodations, and point you towards additional resources where you can make sure you're getting the most up-to-date information before you go. Now, Jack, unfortunately, you and I won't be able to make it to this celebration, but we'll be following along with everything happening and all the live streams. And I think we'll have a Resilient Squadron showing at the next one.
Yeah, we're going to try.
Yep. But for this year, we're lucky to have a couple of guests to help us talk about it and find out more about accommodations at Celebration. In particular, we have the CEO of 1050 Entertainment, the company that's contracted to handle accommodations for Celebration, and who we'll be talking to shortly. Before that, we have a special guest who has attended Celebration in the past and will definitely be at this one. Her name is Terry Lee, and she was involved in creating a Facebook group on this topic called Star Wars Celebration ADA Attendees. It's a great group with a lot of great information and a really valuable resource for learning more about accommodations and discussing it all with other fans who are going. So welcome, Terry.
Hi, how's everyone doing today? I'm so excited. We're recording this for less than a month away from the start of Star Wars Celebration, and I'm getting so excited.
Yeah, so we're also, by the way, not sure when this episode will come out, but it's presumably going to be sometime in the month of May. And so we should be right now at least 2 to 3 weeks away from the show. So hopefully this information will be useful to people.
And by the time this comes out, I've probably packed and unpacked about 3 or 4 times.
Exactly. So I guess, can you tell us a little bit about your experience of Celebration in the past? You went in 2017 and 19?
Yes, my very first one. Starting off, I am a longtime Star Wars fan. I saw it in the theater with my dad when I was 7 years old, saw New Hope. And since then, I was hooked. Pretty much, kind of followed the original trilogies. I saw the prequels, liked them and such not. But my husband surprised me in 2017 with tickets to Star Wars Celebration. I had heard of Celebration, but I wasn't really aware of it. I'm not really a con person, so I really didn't attend a lot of them. Kind of did small ones here and there with friends, but never like San Diego Comic-Con or any of the big ones. And went down. Now, just before we went, I had to have surgery on my neck and back, and I was still going through rehab. And if any of the listeners know anything about the early days of Celebration, Star Wars fans are known for camping out and sleeping and lines. And I mean, I can remember with the prequels, people camping out for a week. Celebration right there on top. Well, after having surgery, I was not going to be comfortable sleeping on a cement floor. And I saw this tiny paragraph on the Star Wars Celebration.com site talking about accommodations and how they had a ADA badge. Well, I think at that time it was a sticker. You had a ADA sticker that kind of helped you through. You didn't have to stand in lines. Unfortunately, you did still have to sleep out for a ticket. So my husband and I decided I was not going to put my health at risk, and we were going to go back. And so I did not sleep in line, but I did get my ADA badge to kind of help with other lines and with other things that would go through a celebration. For anybody that was in Orlando knows that we got to Orlando. I believe the doors opened at 9:30. We got there at 9:30. The line was around the convention center. And I do mean around the convention center, all the way around. Again, I was having standing issues, the reason, with my back. And I had the app open. I had everything that I had written down for the day about ADA entrances, about public entrances, when things would open. And I actually went to the back. It took us an hour to get to the back entrance. And I walked in and I pulled up everything. I had papers and I showed the security guard, like, no, this is an entrance that was supposed to open 20 minutes ago. So he opened the entrance and all of a sudden everybody just came in behind us. So if you've talked to anybody, the ADA experience was not great in Orlando. It was hard. You had to back up. I've talked to several people who've gotten in arguments with security guards and things going through and what happened. Well, with that experience, that's where I kind of met Miriam, who is my other admin in the 88 group. And we were talking and chatting about, what a mess this was. Well, the next celebration that came along was Chicago. And Chicago, the big talk initially on there's several celebration Facebook groups. There was one Facebook group and everyone was talking about the clear bags. If anyone's been to a sports arena or a concert, you have to take a clear tote bag backpack. Well, not everybody wants to take in, a clear bag showing their,
Exactly.
needles for, insulin shots or catheters. You don't want that. You don't want the world showing that. Well, this conversation was coming out in the public group. And Miriam and I had become friends. And I talked to her, like, what do you think about a group that we can talk about this stuff between ourselves? My dad, he had catheters at the time. I knew the problems with, so he wouldn't want to talk about that in an open forum. So I thought, we would open it up. And so we created a group and said, hey, these are the issues you need. At the time, we didn't know if it would be stickers or wristbands. Like, come in, we'll get a group together, we'll talk amongst ourselves. Power of many, we get a group together, we can go to Read Pop as one big group, say, give us answers. Because the other time, individuals were going to Read Pop, one person would get one answer, one person would get another answer. So it wasn't consistent. So that's one thing that the group has really done. We have a great relationship with 1050. You're going to talk to Austin soon. He is our partner. We have a great relationship. We work extremely well with them in Chicago. There were small hiccups here and there, but it's a great relationship. We have questions. We know exactly who to go to. We have the group. My hope is that we would get 50 people. As of this recording, we have 650 people in the group. It is amazing.
That's awesome.
So it shows you that's the need.
Yeah, it's grown a lot since I joined.
Oh, yeah. We've grown like 200 people in the last month or so. It's just amazing. The word's getting out. And the other thing, not only, with disabilities and everything, but you got to realize, Star Wars has been around for 40 or almost 50 years. Our fan base is getting older. And, as you get older, those knees don't work quite as well. Running from one end of the convention hall to the other, we're just not able to do that.
Even the actors, not just us, but like the people that worked on the movie.
Yeah, I always like to say that people who aren't disabled just aren't disabled yet.
Yeah. I mean, I still have a little trouble with my back, but right now, whereas in 2017, it was back issues. This celebration, it's knee issues. So, it keeps going lower.
I think that's one thing that people don't always realize with disabilities. And even like you said, injuries or surgeries, there's any number of things that can cause you to have some issues that need accommodations. And a lot of them can change over time and come and go. Even people with like chronic illness or even some disabilities can from like day to day or even within the course of a day, different experiences and changes. So it's important to accommodate a lot of different needs. And it's important to, sometimes you need to get accommodation just in case because you don't know what's going to happen if you're going to need it or not.
Exactly. If I have a good day, my knees, I can walk all morning, but right around lunchtime, you'll see me and I'll be pulling out my braces and, getting my cane. It's like it can really change hourly almost. It's like I can wake up, have, a great morning, walk down the stairs, be great, go on a walk, and then all of a sudden come back and my knee said, nope, not anymore. You need some assistance there. So, and that's one thing too that I hope that attendees know. One of the things that we really try to push that no, not all disabilities are visible. You just don't know just because you're not, you're not in a wheelchair, you don't have, an aid, does not mean you're not going through something. In Chicago, there was a lady in line with me, and her son was on the spectrum, and she's like, he's fine this morning, doing great, but halfway through the day, we're going to have to find a quiet room. And it's like, that's great. It's like, and that's one of the things that I love that 1050 and Reed Pop have done. We have quiet rooms now that people can go and just get out of the way and just kind of desensitize. And it's one of the things that I think Star Wars and Lucasfilm is, one of the leaders with that. They realize that, their population needs some assistance.
Right. And there's actually an incident. We have a con here that's 3 times a year. And this last one in April, there was a young man who was in the photo op line, and he was on the spectrum. And I guess, I don't know what happened, but he had a meltdown or something was going on and ended up being a huge incident. But as far as I'm aware, that convention does not have any type of sensory accommodations.
Right.
Just let everyone know because of, the things that we talk about. We do have, we're considered a private group. You can't just join. There's simple questions saying you will follow the rules because we don't want bots. So if you don't answer the questions, you're not going to get in the group.
I mean, I like that it's a very private but very accommodating group. It's very non-judgmental, non-argumentative. It's supportive,
Yeah.
and hopefully, because it's private, like you said, people can feel pretty comfortable coming in and asking their questions about their own situation. It's really great for that, at least in terms of their needs, even if they don't want to talk specifics about their medical situation.
Yeah.
Well, we really appreciate you joining us for this because the Facebook group is like a really valuable resource and community, and we'll be providing a link to it in the show notes. But you can also provide a lot of insight in this next discussion, which is with Austin Whitney, who actually is coordinating disability accommodations at Celebration. Welcome to the show, Austin. Austin is the president of 1050 Entertainment, which is providing all the accommodation support for Celebration, as well as a lot of other events. So, Austin, can you tell us more about your background and how you got involved in this work?
So my name is Austin Whitney. I live in Southern California. I grew up here. I actually grew up in Orange County where Star Wars Celebration's happening. And when I was 18 years old, I was in a car accident that severed my spinal cord at the T11 level, paralyzing me from the waist down. So that was, 15 years ago. And when that happened to me, I was just in a dark place. Like, I didn't know anybody in a wheelchair before that happened to me. I never knew anybody who had like a visually identifiable disability. I just thought like my life was over. That I wasn't, going to, go on with my life. That I wasn't going to get a job or have a girlfriend, or like I wasn't gonna be able to do anything cool. I just thought it was all over. I then remember, getting invited to go to like my first live event after that, which happened to be Coachella Music Festival, where I just came back from yesterday. And I did, at first I didn't think I was going to be able to go. I told my friends like, oh, I don't know if that's for me. I don't know if I'd be able to see the stage. I don't know how to get around through the crowds, with my wheelchair. I don't know even how like I'd use the restroom there. And my friends were just like, hey, Austin, let's go figure it out together. Like, we've figured out other things. I'm sure we can figure this out. You need to go. So I went to this event, and it was the first time that I remember, like, after the car accident, like smiling and like, just like being like a 19-year-old kid at that point, like just like living in the moment, not being consumed by my anxieties or my own anxiousness about my future. And I just said, I want to keep doing things like this. So, I was very much into music. I said, okay, I want to go to this event this month. The next month I want to go to that event. And the next month I want to go to another event. And back then, this was 2008 now, a lot of those events weren't accessible, but some of them were to a little bit of extent. But having those events to go to helped me get through the most difficult time in my life, 100%. So now when I'm doing my work and, like I'm out there and someone's watching a show and, with a disability and they're crying saying, this changed their life. I know they're serious about it because I was there once. So I did this type of work in college, living up in Berkeley, and, with a strong, disability rights movement, started there. So like it was very much into that and was working events. And it was, I started law school still in Berkeley. And my first year there, I got invited by some friends who were throwing a music event. They said, hey, do you think you could help us with accessibility? And I said, yeah, I think I could do that. I understand event production, having worked in the industry for a little bit, and my own experience with disability. I understand kind of the laws about it. I think I can help you out with that. It went really well. We had a lot of fun. And, I was sitting in class, my second year of law school, a couple months later, and an event producer called me up because we had the same security director. And they said, hey, do you think you can help us with 10 events that we're throwing this year? And including one of them is like the largest attended music festival in America called EDC, which at the time was doing about 130,000 people a day. And I said, yeah, I think I can do that. And that's when I realized like, oh, there might be a job doing this. It sounds like there's a market need for what could be provided, providing event producers with basically assistance, figuring out how do you plan an event to be accessible for anybody who wants to attend. At first I thought event producers were mostly going to be coming at it from like, oh, how do we lower our legal liability? How do we manage the risk on it? And that's also just my mind being in law school at the time. But I've been pleasantly comforted over, the last 10 years now by the fact that most of the time event producers, they want to do the right thing. They just merely don't have like the toolkits to think like, okay, how is somebody who's blind going to be able to enjoy this, or how somebody who's deaf, or somebody with a cognitive neurological developmental disability, or somebody in a wheelchair, whatever it might be. And that's where I kind of come in and bring my, skill sets, my experience to the table and kind of do ADA compliance planning and then operations once we're there. So that started in 2014. Now I've been doing this for 8 years. Over 400 events. It started in the music world because that's what I knew. So like I said, I just came back from Coachella. I was the ADA compliance director there for both weeks of it. We had 800 people our first week of Coachella with disabilities. And we had, I think, 1,008 guests with disabilities last weekend. Every type of disability possible. And we probably have like the largest ADA program just because it's such a big site and so many different needs. We have 9 different stages going. Yeah. We want to do it as well as possible. I'm heading off. We have our sister show called Stagecoach Music Festival this weekend. So I came home for one day to just get out of the desert for the first time in like 3 weeks. I'm like, I got to go home. So I'm at home today, but I go back to the desert at 6 a.m. tomorrow and go do one more Stagecoach. And then, but over the years, we moved out of music. I mean, we most of our work still is in music. We work with about 70% of the nation's top 100 grossing music festivals in 22 states. So that's in the rock world, something like Coachella, or something in the country world, like Stagecoach, or electronic dance, there's EDC, or hip hop, there's Rolling Loud, do pop shows, metal shows, whatever type of music you're into, I probably work a show in that genre of music. But then over the years, we've started doing other things. I started in this world of music festivals thinking like, oh, I want to help guests with disabilities help, enjoy music festival experiences. And it was pretty quickly after that I realized like, oh, wow, what I want to do in music festivals, nobody's doing that in like the greater like live event setting, which was crazy to me. I'm like, it's 20 at the time. I'm like, it's 2015. How is there like, how are convention event throwers or sporting event, or municipal events, like how are they not getting advisement on these things that are really important to folks? So I started working with Reed Pop, who throws Star Wars Celebration maybe in 2016 or 2017. And I've worked with them on a number of their shows for the last, 4 or 5 years. I've been the ADA compliance director for New York Comic Con, two of their big Comic Con events. This will be my first year at Star Wars. In the past years, I'd been conflicted out with other prior engagements. So I knew what was going on with them and I helped formulate a lot of the planning, but I wasn't able to be on site. For me, it is a dream come true. I am a big Star Wars fan.
Okay, well, that was one of our next
Yeah,
ones.
I mean,
what's your level
like a big one, like
Oh, he's got, okay, thank you. Yeah.
I grew up with Star Wars. Star Wars was like, like I was a nerd, reading, expanded universe stuff as a kid. Like I'm all about it. So to be getting to finally do it, this is a dream come true for me. That like the timing lined up and it's like, okay, great. Especially in like the post-pandemic world, like they're challenging. There's a lot of new considerations. So it is one of the more challenging events that, my company's working on. So when they get to be like, oh, wow, there's a lot of different elements going on here. That's when I really do like being involved. So yeah, music. And I do some sporting events. I do like the PGA Championship the week before Star Wars. So that and some municipal events. And I'm grateful that I get to help people enjoy these really cool experiences. It's a dream for me. It's way, way better than practicing law, which was what I thought I was going to be doing with my life. And, I just like helping people enjoy whatever they're into. That brings me joy. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I liked also what you said about, that event organizers, because we never know this for sure about a lot of organizers or business owners or whatever, like what their level of commitment is to addressing issues and how much of it is just checking the box on ADA legal requirements and how much of it is like actually wanting to do the right thing. And it's cool to hear that a lot of them are really into that.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's, like a lot of people take like, like throwing like a big event like this is like somebody's multiple people's like life work, what they spend doing all the time, and they're passionate about it. Like we love when doors open and to see how excited people are to actually enjoy the thing, that we've spent months, years working on. Like, okay, cool. That's like that's the payoff is when everybody shows up and they're stoked on what you made. Nobody wants to design something that in and of itself by design purposes is going to be exclusionary, to anybody for that purpose. Most of the people I work with, like they're pretty caring individuals that like want everybody to enjoy it. We don't want, in a design feature to be discriminatory against someone. We want everyone to enjoy it, so
right.
That was the realization I had when I started working in this industry. That was a very much a pleasant surprise.
Exactly. I mean, I attend shows all the time, like wrestling, concerts, cons, everything. And yeah, definitely all the promoters are willing to help and they want to help. Like you said, they want to make their event accessible to everybody. But sometimes, again, if you're able-bodied or let's say, you're not, I'm in a chair, but I'm not blind. So they just don't know exactly what to do. So very, very rarely will you run into somebody that just doesn't want to help. It's all just not knowing.
And I think about my life before I was, in a wheelchair, and it's like when I was going out into like public gatherings and stuff, I wasn't really thinking like, oh, is this accessible? Right. And like now, it's like, obviously that'll be the first thing I notice, but I think about like, like a father of a child in a wheelchair. That person will tell you if their child is there or not, like, oh, there's accessibility features lacking there. That somebody who might not have that connection with disability just might not be thinking of every step along the way.
Exactly.
Because that's what you really have to do. You have to look at everything. Because just like one set of stairs, all of a sudden, every cool design feature in there that was made to be accessible, okay, now it's not accessible. So it's just a lot of attention to detail on it to make sure, okay, every feature here is going to be usable by, folks, again, in those different categories, auditory, visual, neurological, developmental, mobility, dietary disabilities, whatever it might be. And that's kind of the service that we're providing. It's just really thinking those through. We've done 2 site walks of the Anaheim Convention Center this year just to go over everything. And I feel pretty good about where we're at, that people are really going to enjoy it.
Great. Yeah, I think it's as much an awareness issue of just knowing those things, but also having people like yourself and your organization who actually have more of that experience and knowledge to actually come in and and provide insight. Part of what we want to do is also we want to provide this information for the guests of Celebration and the fans. Of course, that's our main goal, but also part of what we want to do through education on these kind of things is share information for organizers also who, there could be people running any level of cons or events, or even just local events, your get-togethers,
Yeah, totally. I mean, that would be great if somebody watches this and they think of something, they hear something here, they're like, oh, that's what they do at Star Wars Celebration, and they can take it into their own community, and the thing that does give me, there are challenges, and there's challenges I experience every day doing my job. The good news for me that at least gives me optimism is I believe the steady pace of history to be more inclusive. I just think about where things were, where I started 15 years and where they are today. And while things still have a long way to go, I experience this in my life when I'm not, when I'm working or when I'm not working, I'm just trying to engage with society and there's accessibility challenges. I know how frustrating that is, but, it has gotten better. And, I believe in my heart that it will keep getting better.
Yeah. Awesome. I wanted to ask you along those lines about Accessible Festivals. That's your nonprofit, right? What kind of work do you do through there?
Yeah. So Accessible Festivals started, we founded originally, everything was going to be, okay, we're going to found this as a nonprofit. And then pretty soon the stuff that I was doing for the event producers, we started doing more. So besides doing ADA compliance consulting, I do stuff like I run guest services departments, volunteer management. I have locker rentals for companies. Just we have an art department proposal. We just provide a lot of services to event producers. Working with over 100 events a year. Enough that didn't fit within the nonprofit in terms of their mission statement to the IRS. It wasn't solely anymore about just accessibility. So we had to found a separate company. So then we said, okay, we already have our 501c3 status. Let's keep the nonprofit and set it up with its own executive director, its own board, where it can just focus on doing good work, that might not, make revenue, but it just exists solely to promote sort of the initiatives that we want it to do, to either help the industries that we work with or help encourage, people with disabilities to do, to learn about it. Some of the programs that we run for our events in the music world, not so much in the convention world. But we should expand to conventions. We like giving away complimentary admission for people with disabilities who might not be able to afford to attend, who might need something to look forward to in their life. We got 2 concepts here. We got accessibility and we got inclusion, and they're related, but they're not always the same. Right. I can build, an accessible environment, something that's ADA compliant at an event, which for the record, I think is a fairly low threshold. Yeah. Yes, I don't want any of my clients to get sued, but that's not what I'm aiming for. I'm aiming for, how do we make events that are going to be welcoming to people with disabilities? Yeah. How, regardless of what the legal requirements are, because if somebody doesn't feel welcome, okay, we probably didn't hit our goal with that, So, something accessible, great. We'll make sure it's physically accessible, programmatically accessible, but the question, is it really inclusive for everybody? And that takes a little bit more work, and there's community building in there. And my approach was, okay, I can work, on a lot of them through my company, but if I really want to push the inclusion stuff, I also can do additional stuff that I might not be able to do just as a company with the nonprofit. Yeah. And through that linkage, that's kind of how I try and do my work in this world.
Right. I definitely love the inclusion part, because when Greg and I went to Galaxy's Edge, all the accessibility was with everybody else. I'm sure you run into places where I got to go over here. I got to go around the back to the ramp and everything. And it's kind of annoying because then you have to separate from your group. But I love Galaxy's Edge because no, I went with the whole entire crowd the whole time. I never had to go over to the side or to the back or whatever.
And that's one thing I love about temporary events. I don't do much work on built infrastructure because I love the component. And something that attracted me to the line of work at the beginning was that, like, for example, over Coachella, like we spent a couple months building it. We're going to end next weekend, tear it down. And then I get a fresh blueprint, like just a blank canvas of like, was there something that wasn't really accessible there? Cool. Well, let's redesign it and let's build it over. I don't have to deal with all the bureaucratic red tape of knocking down walls and staircases. And granted, I don't really run into that too much in the convention space because they all are fairly good at, as opposed to like 110-year-old music venue or, like a historic amphitheater. Like that's where we run into those. Fortunately, like most convention centers are pretty darn good. And also they're pretty modular as well. And like the things that are being built temporary, those are all the same thing as the music festivals. We can design those however we want. Mm-hmm. And whether it's a sponsorship activation or a store or an activity meet and greet, whatever we're building, it's all temporary. It's all our ability to make it, it's the same thing as Galaxy's Edge. It's new. Cool. Let's take that into consideration from day one.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I also appreciate what you said about inclusion and recognizing how challenging it can be for disabled people to even be able to attend events in the first place, whether it's the cost or their circumstances. I mean, we're certainly conscious of that. I mean, Jack and I specifically can't attend this celebration due to our own circumstances, and we know that applies to a lot of our audience too. So it's not just the ability to get in the door at an event and get around at an event, but just be able to get there can be a huge financial or physical challenge. And if they are able to get there, it might just take like a monumental effort for them or expense for them.
And that's why I feel like on top of everything else I've mentioned, we have such a obligation to excel at when I'm attached to something, to excel at our job. I get that folks are making real sacrifices to be there, whether it's the sporting event, convention, music, whatever it is. This person, you look at like the larger group, there are real socioeconomic issues, for people with disabilities to travel and to spend the money to attend these things. And they've decided that that's worth it to them. Great.
Exactly.
Let's honor that by making sure that they can to the best of their ability. For a lot of the folks attending Star Wars Celebration, like Star Wars is one of their great loves. Like like last week, I have lots of people like this is their favorite band in their whole life. Right. And they should be able to enjoy it just like anybody else.
So yeah, let's talk some specifics about Celebration, and we can get into some more specific accommodations and information in a moment. But first, can you tell us a little bit more about your approach as an organization coming into an event like this? Like what's gone into your preparation?
Yeah, so I mentioned to you that I've worked with ReadPop for a number of years for Read Expo, and we do a lot with them. I mean, COVID.
That's the next question.
I mean, well, there was like pre-COVID and post-COVID, those worlds. I mean, I'd been doing this work for a number of years, and then March of 2020, and like all of a sudden, like the work that I love, the work that my friends are employed in, colleagues and employees, and like everything's just put on hold. So when we started getting events back, summer of last year, it was a bit nutty. Because number one, there's so much enthusiasm to go back. People are so excited to start going back to events. That being said, there's only so much bandwidth in all of these industries. So we did like per month, way more events than I've ever done in 2021. Every weekend, it was multiple 3-4 shows every weekend. And we actually worked with ReadPop. I want to say my company, in addition to doing ADA work, we also were providing a lot of the management for their COVID compliance teams for all their shows. So there were maybe like 8 shows last year for them that, in addition to doing, ADA stuff, that we were doing COVID work with them. And, things have changed already since 2021. I say COVID, because it's a ever evolving landscape. So like if we had this conversation 3 months ago when Omicron was, just everywhere, like, I don't know where events are going to be in May, So we started working late 2021 on this. I had started working on this really in 2020. I'm to start thinking about it. Like, when did I start getting my first blueprints and like start planning it? Yeah, it was 2.5 years ago that I started working on this project.
And y'all have done Celebration 2019, right?
Yeah, I wasn't on site, but I knew what was going on with that. But then when we announced Anaheim, and I said, okay, cool, I'm going to do that. I'm going to put on my calendar. I started, and like we started working off of those blueprints, and then COVID. Then I kind of knew when it was going to be. But then, like with everything with COVID, there was a lot of like, okay, let's wait, let's see where things are, let's get a little bit closer, because a lot of events in my world in 2020 and then some in 2021 was an issue of like pause, re-announce, pause, re-announce. I had events that did it, 3 or 4 times. So kind of got, okay, like let's wait till we're out, into November, December, and then we can kind of get into like the nitty gritty of this, because you just can't plan out farther than that. So that was late in the year. I think I did my first walkthrough in maybe in early February, late January, with me and my team. And we're still doing some COVID work on the show as well. But, COVID compliance has changed from 2021 to 2022. I started kind of working on our operations plan around that time. And event production, like little changes make big changes. I'll put it that way. So it wasn't really till April that it was like, okay, cool. I really feel good about what this all looks like from a fan's perspective in terms of, when I think about this, the way I'm thinking about how we build these environments is, okay, what does it look like from, the time before an event? Like, how does the fan have information? How do they get there? How do they arrive? How do they get from there, to get their badges, get their ADA credentials, get to the entrance? Okay. And then how are they engaging, with our activities there, which are going to be our meet and greets, our panels, our stores, our other fan activities, obviously with the other fans. And then on an infrastructure level, going between levels, restrooms, quiet rooms, and then a customer service element of how does somebody get assistance on site once they're there and they require those things. So it wasn't really till April that we're like, okay, cool. I feel like we're in a good place. And now we can start putting together like the finished product and be able to put it out there to, to the fans, so that in the month leading up, they can make their preparations and feel comfortable attending. So it's taken a while. Normally it doesn't work quite like this, but as I started, COVID. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for all your patience with us. I really, really appreciate it. I know you guys are going to love it on site. It's been a challenge, getting to this point, but it's going to be rad.
Yeah. And it's probably something we should point out, is that at the time of recording this, we're actually exactly 1 month away from the start of Celebration. And we'll have to see when this episode comes out and when people are listening to it. But it's probably going to be like 2 to 3 weeks out. And it's quite possible things could change. Things are changing. Things have changed even as far as policy in the past week or so. So, we hope to provide as much insight and information as we can here, but also be sure to double check everything we talk about as it gets closer to the event. And we'll definitely have a lot of links in our show notes where you can find some of that current information.
Yes, please check our health and safety document, on the Star Wars Celebration site, immediately coming by, just to make sure nothing's different than what I'm stating.
Yeah, and so I guess currently the COVID guidelines, based just on the latest change we've seen, is that right now they're requiring either proof of vaccination or a recent negative test. Is that right?
That's accurate.
And so y'all are just going to be checking for those things, like checking for proof at the door?
Yes, that is accurate. That everything will be done in advance. Before the event, we accept fully vaccinated or testing. And for testing, it could either be done 2 days before for a PCR test or 1 day before for an antigen test. And that has to be verified on site. It's basically when you go through the whole credentialing process. I don't think we've also announced that part yet, so I'm going to hold off on getting into details of that one in terms of the check-in process.
And yeah, and again, all this is going to be on the health and safety website for Celebration, which we'll link to. So like, how big of a presence is your company going to have there as far as staff?
So it'll be me, plus I think I have 7 staff members. at Celebration this year. It's a comparable team size to what we had at Chicago. Might actually be one more. I got this really great team of folks, that help me with these. That, it takes a unique type of person to come to work for me, because it's not only just a dedication, like loving this type of work, live event work, which is stressful, but it's super fun. But it also is a component of coming to it just wanting to be like an empathetic human being, wanting to work with people with disabilities in these environments.
Gotcha. So does that also involve some training or other preparations for the rest of the Repop team and the volunteers who will be on site?
Absolutely. So I'm engaged with them on a totally different project, which is like a corporate standard operating procedure for accessibility. And, because they do hundreds of events. I only work with them on, like 10 or 15 of them. So I'm separately working on like a larger, okay, hey guys, this is what it should look like, for all your events. And as a company, corporate, you stand by this, cool. Let's see what that operation looks like. But on site, with like fan experience, with security, even stuff like parking on like perimeter teams, these are all teams that I work with, to do disability etiquette. This kind of falls out okay, this is another example. This isn't ADA compliance per se. There are aspects, don't ask somebody about their disability. It's a legal requirement, but in addition to that, it's just it's rude. It's not how you should treat people. But I do work on understanding person first language, or don't address the person's companion. Assume competence with people with disabilities,
Right.
They're there, you can assume that they can understand you and have their own autonomy to make their own decisions. You don't need to just talk to the able-bodied individuals, who are with them. Don't touch people with mobility aids.
Lean on their chairs.
Don't
lean on their handlebars.
They need the balance. People with hearing disabilities, you don't need to yell at them. They probably have hearing aids in. If they're hard of hearing, that's not going to help. If they're deaf, they're not going to hear you either way. There's aspects of disability etiquette that I work on with the team beyond just the simple, hey guys, this is where you can route people for their questions. Here's a very basic primer on our operation and simple advice for things like where's the ADA entrance, where's our ADA accessibility services hub, which places do we have ADA queuing on, quick thing on ADA parking. Anything more complex than that, it's going to be give us a call. You don't need to be a disability expert. We have a team that are there for that purpose.
Know where to find you.
And you can give us a call. We would love for you to call us so that we can give the right answer to the guest the first time. Because there's nothing worse than somebody getting a wrong piece of information. Now they're circling around the parking garage for 30 minutes and they show up and they're already upset.
Right. So you'll have a primary access center?
Yeah, we're going to have one located when guests check in over at the Marriott, which is right next door to the entrance. So with the operation itself, we will have ADA parking available in car park 1 and car park 4. Both of these are large structures that have a lot of ADA parking in them. They're both accessible off of Catella Avenue, and there will be ADA signage, directional signage, indicating guests how to get to these spots, once they enter. And they both have a ton of spots. Everybody will need a ADA parking placard, plates to park in those spots. And when they enter, if you go through car park 1, guests will then take the elevator down and exit out of car park 2 towards Hotel Way. They'll take a right off of Hotel Way and follow that road to the Marriott and to ADA registration. And then from there, they'll make their way down to Exhibit D and join the ADA queuing to the event. For guests parking at car park 4, which we recommend because it is the best parking option for disabled guests, they'll use the pedestrian corridor to traverse the parking structure to the queue outside of Exhibit Hall D. These are all the details that took us a little while to figure out. So, drop off, and this is a really important point for our guests. If a guest is getting dropped off by friends or family, or they're getting dropped off in an Uber or a Lyft, they need to get dropped off at the transit plaza. We will have clear signage indicating where that is. And please go back to our ADA information that we'll be posting. I think I'll probably have a map there of where this is. So please go back to there to look at it because that'll be the most accessible. But it's right outside of our ADA entrance.
Okay.
Too, here in Pittsburgh, we have something called Access, which it's a part of the public transportation, and they have vehicles with wheelchair lifts that will come to your home and then take you directly to wherever. Do they have anything like that?
Oh, we do. Okta is the provider for Orange County or Orange County Transit Authority, and they also have an access program. And any of those vehicles can also drop off at our transit center, which is right outside of the ADA entrance. And again, we will get all this information, hopefully with a map on the site to show people where to get dropped off. So then from there, guests will be going to our, we have a hub at the Marriott where they can get their ADA credential. That's where anybody would go if they have a mobility disability that makes it so they're not able to stand for long periods of time, and they're going to need help with queuing or help with viewing for our panels. What we'll do is, people just can come talk to us. If they tell us what's going on, cool, we can issue that. Also at that location, though, we can help with other type of accommodations. Like if somebody has a visual disability, like we can offer them like a guided tour to help them make like a mental map of the venue. If somebody needs to check out an assisted listening device, we can do that there. If somebody needs to charge a piece of medical equipment, we can do that there. Or if we need to register a service animal, all animals will need to be checked in so that we can get them a dog credential to enjoy the event. We can also do that at the gates. It's just easier to stop by the accessibility services kiosk there. So yeah, we'll do that there at the Marriott. If somebody doesn't go to the Marriott and they're already inside the perimeter of the event, they've already gone through security. We're also going to have one of our fan services booths have one of my team members there throughout the duration of the event. If you check back on the website, we'll have it listed there. I can't remember. We have 3 different fan services. I can't remember which one we picked. You could stop by any of the fan services, and we can, if it's not something that they can answer, we can send a representative over there. But I know that one of the booths will have somebody there the entire time, at least one of the booths.
What is the Marriott? Is that one going to be open either Tuesday or Wednesday before, or is it only open during the time of the event?
It's going to be open on Wednesday, so not Tuesday, from 2 till 8. And then for the event days, it'll open at 6 a.m.
Thank you.
And that'll be located in the Marriott?
That's accurate. Just like a lot of convention centers, it's kind of like they have like their convention center with their entrance and then like a bunch of hotels, like, right across the street or whatnot, right at the entrance. It's the same thing with our Marriott. I think we also have a Hilton right across the street. But yeah, the Marriott's right next to like the security check and everything. And we're using that for our fan registration ADA desk entrance. So yeah, all of our guests should try and stop by there, before they go in. It'll just be easier for us and easier for them because, what we aim to do, and you guys probably saw us at Chicago, is we love for, our guests with disabilities to come by, chat with us. And, based on that, like I can tell somebody like, okay, based on your condition, here are my recommendations. And not everybody with like a mobility disability is going to have the same experience there. Somebody with a power chair or a scooter is going to have a different experience than somebody in a manual chair or with crutches or a cane, or who might just be walking slowly or have a prosthetic, or even like individuals in wheelchairs might not have the same experience. Somebody with like a cerebral palsy, their experience is going to look different than somebody with like quadriplegia or paraplegia. So we like the chance to sit down real quick and chat with them about our accessible features at the venue, and then give them our recommendations on things that we think, they should be aware of from the get-go so they can go enjoy the event, to the best of their ability. That's our goal with our guests.
So there will be some type of ADA credential of some kind, a badge or wristband, something that will identify them. But I guess not everybody is going to necessarily need that. Yeah,
not necessarily. I mean, like, really we're using those for a couple different things. For our guests who need access to an accessible entrance, to the venue. What I'm really thinking about for our guests with mobility disabilities is I'm thinking about, sight lines for our panels, and then access to our queues for guests that might not be able to wait for long periods of time while standing, that might need seating or might need an expedited queue. So, that comes up at the entrance. That also comes up in some of our day of lanes. We will have a lottery system for checking in for some of our large panels that, but we do have some standby lines. So that'll be for that, for the stores, we have queuing. For the meet and greets, we have queuing. Mm-hmm. So having that ADA credential would put you in a different queue for those type of things. For the entrance, for the day of, waiting, for panels, as well as for the store, as well as meet and greets.
Right. And yeah, Jack and Terry probably have more experience with this than I do, but my understanding is that there's a separate queue for people with ADA credentials, and they won't necessarily have to physically wait in line. All right.
Yes. So, I mean, we have, because for a lot of the stuff with the panels, we have a reservation system for that. And that will be announced shortly on kind of what that looks like. But then we do have some day of queuing in those areas. And these could be long lines for the general public. So we do have a separate ADA lane that, besides being expedited, will also have seating available in those areas to get around the issue of someone not being able to wait, like physically stand alone for a long period of time. I mean, all those queues are ADA compliant, as in somebody with a wheelchair could get through them. But we're thinking about what does it look like if somebody's physically not able to stand, or I'm starting to go into the world of like neurodiversity and neurological developmental disability, where somebody, on account of disability, just simply isn't able to wait in a queue. Those are the type of conditions that would come up. And we do this all in a case-by-case analysis, kind of looking at what somebody needs based on their disability.
Right. I'm curious what changes are happening this year, possibly due to COVID. I guess like one big thing is that there won't be any of those ridiculous long overnight lines, like people camping out for access to panels and stuff. I'm not sure if this was done in 2019, but I guess this year that's definitely not happening, and there's going to be a virtual lottery system for access to panels.
That's my understanding of the situation.
Yeah.
I didn't get to witness these crazy lines in the past.
That's actually what kind of started me into researching what was going on, is those crazy lines that people would camp out. And my first celebration was 2017, and it was the last one they had camping out. And we arrived at 2:00 the day before. Let's see, it started on Thursday. We were there at 2:00 on Wednesday, and the hall was already full for people camping out. And it was just, it was pretty crazy. And so the lottery system's not perfect, but it's so much better than, camping out on cement floor.
Well, there are a lot of our guests who just can't do it. Cognitive, developmental, disability, like just can't do that. So I understand issues with like, I'm going to go there and I don't fully know if I'm going to get a reservation. Like, I get the frustration. But at the end of the day, at least it's fair. At least, everybody has an equal opportunity regardless of their ability.
Yeah. And on a related note, what's the policy regarding like, portable chairs and ones that you can carry with you? I understand there are some restrictions around that.
Yeah, we're repeating our 2019 policy on this. I know we're going to have some seating available in addition in our ADQs. I just want to call about that this afternoon. We have restrictions on chairs as well. Not all chairs are acceptable. So I would, just like the health policy, I'd refer back to that to get what our restrictions are on it. Another thing about chairs, I want to highly recommend to guests, because there is a lot of walking around. It's like a large space to cover. That if you think you're going to need a mobility aid, if you're thinking like, oh, I would benefit from bringing a scooter or a wheelchair, I would highly recommend making those preparations in advance. I don't believe we have a on-site rental at the Anaheim Convention Center.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, I know that we did it at McCormick, and I'll double check it. Check on the website for the most up-to-date information. I know there are lots of vendors in Anaheim, just having lived here and done shows in, Southern California for a long time. Like we have lots of vendors, and we'll put some guidance on there on our website and our FAQ about like, hey, here's how to rent a mobility device. But I would really recommend it if somebody's on the board, they're like, oh, I don't know if I should or if I shouldn't. I would recommend doing it, because every time I work a large event, we always have a number of guests who come to us. And if we don't have it, it's like, I can't help you right now, which we could, and a lot of people who thought like, oh, I thought I could do it, but then I get here and it's like a lot more walking than just, but it's a huge space. It's a large center. So I wouldn't want anybody to get too tired and not be able to enjoy themselves when there was some preparation that could have been done that would have helped them enjoy it more.
Along those lines, are you allowed to exit and come back in?
Ooh.
So I'm saying, like, what if you did bring your chair, but it's in the car, you had it just in case, like you're talking about, would you be able to go back and get it
I mean,
for whatever mobility device?
I don't know what our full reentry policy is.
Mhm.
If somebody has, say, somebody needs to leave an event
Mhm.
because of a disability, so a medical condition comes up all the time in my world. Somebody is diabetic and they left their insulin in the car, or something like that, where there's a medical need for it, but they need to leave and then they need to come back. We're going to allow that.
Yeah.
Nobody should not be able to
Right.
enjoy it on account of their disability. It goes back to that. Now, that being said, I would not recommend people to exit and re-enter if they don't have to. I would bring everything you need to bring the first time, because to do it, it's like, okay, we got to work with security on it. Like, it's hoops to go through. I don't even know what our general attendee GA, like what our re-entry policy is on it. I just know in my world, if I have somebody who comes to our booth and says, "Hi, I have a disability. I need to go off site because of it, and I'm going to we're going to make that happen." But that being said, hoops that we have to go through. So if we can avoid it, that would be optimal.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And kind of along those lines, what kind of food availability is there around there? Are there vendors, restaurants, or cafes, or things like that in the center or near there? And what kind of policies are there as far as bringing your own food if you need to?
Yeah, so I want to be we're conscientious, of dietary disabilities from the get go.
Yeah.
We have like a food court with like concessionaires there, and there are plenty of dietary options out there. I know we have vegetarian food, vegan food. I think we have kosher food there, and then like you get into the stuff of like gluten free and allergies. That being said, if somebody has a severe allergy, to peanuts or anything else like that, or a gluten intolerance, and they need to bring in outside food, like we're starting to get into the world of like celiac disease, and somebody's like, they just can't even deal with like cross contamination on like the same oven or dishes that might have had these things, even if you don't order it. When we get down to those type of sensitivities, I'm just recommending ultimately you should probably bring your own food, like, so you're not reliant on us just because these are vendors. Like, I want you to feel comfortable, and I don't want you to feel constrained with your own safety to something that's being provided. It'd probably be fine, but like, you should just be allowed to bring whatever you want, to eat your lunch or your dinner. Just in those circumstances, notify when you're bringing things through. You're going to stop by security and you're going to tell them you have outside food because of a dietary disability. Probably ask for the manager in that case. They might bring someone from my team over because I'll have people at the gates to assist with these. And those are things that we provide approval on medical exemptions to our security protocols. And we do that very, very frequently. We just ask that guests bring in a personal amount of food for them and don't bring in alcohol. And besides that, all good.
So yeah, and you mentioned earlier about service animals. So I know all service animals need to be registered. Are there any guidelines or requirements as far as service animals and what's allowed or not?
It just needs to be a legal service animal. So we don't allow therapy animals, comfort animals, emotional support animals, pets. It needs to be a dog or miniature horse that has been individually trained to assist an individual with a disability, one or more major life activities, whatever it might be. And as long as the animal has been trained to provide that, we'll ask what that task or function is. The owner should understand that, they're responsible for the animal, that it needs to be on a leash at all times, unless the person's disability doesn't allow that. Like you talk about like an amputee or something, the dog needs to be housebroken. We'll have a service animal relief area set up for the animals.
Yeah.
It should be properly up to date with like rabies vaccination. Those are really the big ones, but yeah, as long as the animal's a legal service animal, is trained to assist the individual on account of their disability, then we'll let that one in.
Yeah. And I guess a related thing that's probably worth mentioning that really applies to attendees of any kind of event or park is that when people have service animals, like if you see a service animal being used that's marked as such, it's really not appropriate to go petting them or touching them or even like interacting with them, like even getting their attention or distracting them from their work. A service animal is at work when it's performing its duties, and that person with whatever disability that's with them is relying on them for some purpose, and you can really affect that person's experience at that event. I mean, if a person invites you to interact and gives you the go ahead and allows it, then sure. And like a lot of kids will do that, and most people are understanding about that. But it's also a good opportunity to teach kids awareness of that, to not just go running up to a service animal to pet them or something if they haven't been invited to do that.
Yeah, and I have a service animal. Her name's Ophelia, and it's like, I mean, if I bring my dog to an event, I'm gonna get asked if she could be petted 50 to 100 times a day.
Yeah.
And it's like part of it is like you have to say no because you don't want the dog to start expecting this from strangers when she's supposed to be focused on her job.
Right.
It's like that's just like the reality of it. Because like I work in crowded areas all the time where everyone wants to pet the dog. Yeah, but we have things to do.
Right.
Just it comes up a lot. But I'm glad you mentioned the etiquette on it.
Yeah, and it's an etiquette thing.
We will have queue lines for our guests at the celebration store. So that definitely will be a thing.
Okay.
Let's see. We will have lots of ADA signage throughout the event, whether it's for the queue lines or for parking or for the entrance or our accessibility services hub. Always some patience. We have a lot of temporary staff who've never worked this event before and, our outside vendors, and we are trying to get the right information. If in doubt, and if you aren't getting a right answer, please ask a staff member to radio in to the ADA team because I can for sure get you the right answer. I just need to have some awareness on the issue. I saw a question in here about companions. We allow one companion for the individual with a disability. I wish we could offer more, but we do ultimately have finite resources, and we need to make sure that for our viewing, for our panels and stuff, that as much of that space is being utilized by those who truly need it as possible. So, that everyone's able to enjoy that. That being said, when we start getting into the world of families and we're talking about minors, we'll make an exception for that in that case. So just come by our accessibility services hub. We don't want, unattended minors because of our policy. We will have 2 quiet rooms at the venue on different sides of the venue. So there will be one in room 209B and one in the prayer room in 21C. If somebody's feeling, just a little overstimulated or is going through a crisis and just wants to take a little reprieve from the event, it's pretty hectic in there. So, somebody just needs a break, just needs a calming environment. We'll have 2 of those available. If somebody needs to bring in a piece of medical equipment, say they have syringes, for they're a diabetic, or a mobility device that might be different than a cane or wheelchair. We can totally go through that. And I would encourage you to shoot us an email. If you shoot us an email, if you have any questions about what's allowed in and what's not, generally speaking, if it's there because it's needed for a medical necessity, we're going to allow it. But it's also good for us to have some aware of this because we actually make a registry of every single person who has a security exemption request. We make the list of that so we can hand that off to security. So it just makes things a little bit easier at the gates. Those, I think, are the main ones I see in the FAQs that we didn't touch on already. And then anything that's not, that we didn't touch on, if it's not addressed in the website's ADA language, if it's not touched on in the FAQ that we're putting together for the Facebook group, you can shoot us an email. And, we would love to answer those questions for anything that comes up. I know we answer a lot of questions from guests, and I know we have a lot of catch up to do now that we have our finalized plan. But, we'll be getting to all of our guests with individual inquiries as they come up.
Right. One other area I wanted to ask about specifically was, is there ASL at each panel, or is it only on certain panels or by request?
Yeah, I want to say we have a fairly comprehensive ASL program at the events. We've already contracted our vendor for the panels, and I want to say we have ASL for pretty much everything going on the celebration stage and the Galaxy stage on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And also we have, I kind of mentioned we have assisted listening devices for our guests who are hard of hearing, but we'll be deploying those at those stages.
Yep. Okay. Well, I think that covers all the major areas we had in mind. I guess the main thing to know is that people can reach out to y'all at the email address that we'll include in the show notes if they have any specific questions, and check the website that we'll also link to if they need like more general information.
I have a great team of people who help and that do a lot of our ADA inquiries that understand A, the operation, and B, how to work with guests with disabilities, understand the different conditions, understanding the different etiquette points to it. So they'll be answering questions from now through the show. And yeah, if anybody has anything that wasn't covered here, we'd love to answer it. We want folks to come prepared and feeling like they understand what's going to happen. As somebody with a disability myself, I know the feeling of showing up somewhere and being like, I hope this works. I don't know how it's going to work, but I hope it works. And it's a frustrating and anxiety-filled experience. So we don't want anybody to feel that way. And I apologize if anyone's felt that way for the last couple of years as things have moved and plans have changed. But, as we get into 1 month before the show, everybody should be able to be getting all the information they need to make their final preparations for it.
Oh, and that was one other thing I want to mention was that you've been working with Terry to collaborate on FAQ to flush that out for the Facebook group. And I know that's going to be a great resource that will point people to. And we don't know exactly when this will come out again, but there is an upcoming on May the 4th live Q&A event they'll have planned. We'll be answering questions, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of these same kind of questions, but possibly some more information at that time. And I know if this comes out after that, there's probably going to be a recording in there somewhere. For anyone who joins the Facebook group.
Absolutely. And for a couple of the questions that came up that I didn't have full clarity on, hopefully by next week, even more will be revealed. So I look forward to meeting the attendees that,
And as far as you personally, I know on social media, you've got, your dog Ophelia has an Instagram account.
I do. I don't have a personal Instagram, but my dog has an Instagram.
I was looking for you, and that's what I found was.
Yeah, the festival dog, because I think she has been to more than 100 music festivals in her life, because that's where we got started. Just posted a picture of her at Coachella last week. So that's Ophelia. And I think she will be at Star Wars Celebration. So
awesome. So everyone can come meet Ophelia, but please do not interact with Ophelia unless you're invited.
Exactly.
All right. Well, we really appreciate it. This has been awesome. And I'm sure it's been really useful for our listeners. We really, really appreciate you coming on and talking to us.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. That was a great discussion. I want to thank Austin a lot for joining us, and I hope that was really insightful information for everybody. I want to mention one thing that came up during the discussion that audio listeners might not have picked up on that we were all laughing about was that when Austin started talking about his level of fandom, he showed us his large AT-AT tattoo on his chest that took up much of his chest. And I just lost my mind because I'm an AT-AT addict. So that completely proved his fan credentials in my mind. So that was really funny and really cool. And also is kind of nice to hear, that we've got fans who both have the experience and the knowledge and also the fandom to support fellow fans. And it's great to hear that he's going to get to go this year himself and experience it himself. Since that recording with Austin, we've actually had a little break here. And in the past day, coincidentally, they released a lot of accessibility information for Celebration. So ReadPop put up what they're calling their ADA assistance program page on their website, which actually has a lot of the information we talked about on the discussion with Austin and also clarifies a couple things that he wasn't quite sure about. We found out, Terry, right, what they're going to be using for credentials?
Stickers. They will be using stickers.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, when they had stickers before, they put them directly on your badge. And if you're a collector and you don't want sticky stuff on your badge, I recommend picking up a badge holder, just a clear one that you can stick your badge in, and they'll put the sticker on that.
Yeah, exactly. And they do have clarification here that I think you pretty much covered, but basically just to be clear that they'll give you a companion sticker, one for each disabled attendee. They will make exceptions to that for families with small children. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to worry about that. And it does say that you can switch your companion if you need to, if you have certain people who can end with you on certain days or others It says to bring the old companion sticker to the 88 desk, and they will reissue you one.
And also, I know in Chicago, a lot of people, if you were not fortunate enough to get a 4-day pass and you have a Thursday pass, a Friday pass, a Saturday pass, a Sunday pass, please make sure to bring every single pass with you to the desk first time, so then you won't have to go back each day.
That's another great tip. And he provided a lot of detail, and I know that they will have maps eventually to clarify where to go for certain things. They do have the information here on their website that the 88 desk is at fan services, which is in the marquee ballroom of the Marriott next to the convention center, and where a lot of people will be staying. So you should be able to find them there, the marquee ballroom. That's where you would go whenever you're able to, I guess. Most people, I think, are going to want to go the day before in the afternoon when you arrive, get it taken care of, go get your sticker, your credential, get registered.
So you can start Wednesday at 2:00.
Yeah.
The hours are up, but I believe it's 2 to 6. And then beginning at 6 a.m. every day during celebration.
Right. Yeah. And what Austin was saying, like, go there at least one time. They're going to have at each entrance, my understanding, like you're saying, they'll have ADA support at each entrance to be able to accommodate you, but also you need to go probably to that desk first to get signed up. And then they will actually give your name to security, so they'll know that you can go through whatever accommodation line. Does that sound right?
Yeah, they're really good in the past. If you carry a certain bag, if you have a cane that looks slightly like a weapon, or if you have a cane that looks like a lightsaber, I wish we had real lightsabers, but there's some things that security may have a question about. And if you go through the ADA desk ahead of time, they will clear you, and security will have your name. You don't have to go through the whole hassle every single day. But yeah, you've got to remember security is there to keep everybody safe. But at the same time, you have needs. You may need to bring in, certain machines. Security may have a question about them, but if they've been okayed through ADA, you won't have a problem getting through.
Yeah, and then if you have any other questions, I would highly recommend people join the Facebook group, which is Star Wars Celebration ADA attendees.
What I usually do is I go in and type Star Wars Celebration ADA. It is the Star Wars Celebration ADA attendees group. And you can just search for Star Wars Celebration ADA in Facebook, and it will come up.
And we'll also provide a link to it in the show notes.
Thank you.
We definitely recommend people go there. If this episode's come out by May the 4th, then you can also check out the live stream or find the recording there.
Yeah, we will have the recording.
Q&A.
What time does that start?
4 p.m. PST, 7 p.m. PST.
Correct.
On May the 4th.
May the 4th. Yeah, we will have the recording on the site.
Yep. And of course, I'm sure at that point also, Austin will probably even have more information, answer more questions. We also did check, and according to the site, the official email, which we'll also put in the notes, is ada@readpop.com. And that will go to their team. So Terry, in addition to the Facebook group, you mentioned there's some other involvement you're going to have at that celebration.
Yeah, we have been very fortunate, and the 501st Walking Wounded is going to have a table over in the fan area, and they've invited us to come and talk about our group as well. So you will find volunteers from the group there throughout the event. We'll have lots of swag to give, so come by and get one of our stickers and some of our cards, and we'll be happy to talk to you about the group. And I also know that they'll be there happy to talk about the Walking Wounded.
Yeah, and for anyone who doesn't know, the Walking Wounded Detachment is an official unit of the 501st Legion costuming group, but it's basically for fans who are disabled, chronically ill, or have other types of impairments, who are still out there costuming. And they talk about the modifications they'll make to their costumes, their accommodation needs for troop events they go to, and some of the challenges involved. It's a really supportive group, and they do a lot of really cool work. It's a cool group. I'm glad to hear that they're going to be having representation at Celebration this year. That's also really, really cool.
Yeah, and we're very happy. We're honored to be included in, Little Square.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so we're happy to talk about that and partner with them. And I really don't know how long they've been with the 501st, but they now have branched out and the Rebel Legion and the Mandalorian Mercs all have branches
Yep.
of the Walking Wounded for the costuming.
Yeah, essentially they've expanded the group. That was part of the 501st to begin with, but now I think it was sometime last year or so.
Yeah, in the last year.
And Albin Johnson is the founder of the 501st, and he actually created the Walking Wounded Detachment because he himself is disabled, and he wanted to be able to create a community for that subgroup of fans and costumers and provide support for their particular needs when it comes to costuming. And that booth, like you said, you'll be handing out some stuff, and that's going to include one of our listeners' only opportunities to get actual Resilient Squadron stickers that you made for us, which is awesome.
I will have some of those. There's also a podcast meetup, which I will be attending on Thursday night at the Hilton. So I'll have some stickers with me there. So I'll be passing those out to everyone.
Yeah, you can represent us there a bit if you don't mind. Everybody who joins us is a Resilient Squadron member.
Exactly.
We
should send a little R2D2 and put a cell phone on it.
Yeah.
A little video screen. Yeah, we should send Rescue.
That would be cool.
Rescue is our mascot, our logo.
Oh, yes.
Little adopted VO model droid, but we call him RESQ because he's a rescue droid.
Yep.
Has his own disabilities and issues.
Slowly working on a life-sized one.
Yeah, you need that. I'd take him, probably run him into a lot of chairs, but I'd be happy to take him. Not the best droid driver. Sorry.
Yeah, none of us are. Not with one of those. So, Terry, besides the Facebook group, is there anywhere else people can contact you? If
you can contact me through the Facebook group, and if you want to follow me on Instagram, kind of find out, what we're doing. I'm at Nerd Girl Travels.
Great. I hope you have a lot of Beagle information on there.
Yes, you've got to love Star Wars and love Beagles to follow me, because it's pictures of Star Wars and pictures of my Beagles. I have 2 Beagles of my own, and then we also rescue Beagles. So right now I have 4 dogs in my house. 2 rescue dogs and 2 of my own.
Nice. That's funny. Jack's got his.
Yeah.
Yep. She's a Beagle, right?
Mixed, but yes.
Okay, yeah. My parents have a Beagle.
And she is a rescue.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, thanks a lot for joining us. We really appreciate you coming on and joining us for this conversation with Austin, and especially for sharing your own insights.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And listeners, please, if you're either stop by the Walking Wounded table or find me at the podcast meetup, or I'll be all over Celebration. Check for my IG account and I'll have a sticker for you.
Awesome.
All right. And thanks to everybody for joining us. We always want to hear from you. If you have any questions about any of this stuff or about the podcast in general, or you just want to share your story, we love to hear those. So feel free to reach out to us on social media. You can reach us at Resilient Squadron on Facebook and Instagram, and we're Resilient Squad on Twitter because they don't allow as many characters. You can also check us out on our new website, resilientsquadron.com, where you can find older episodes of the podcast and other content related to disability and chronic illness in the fandom. We also really appreciate it if you could give us a rating or review on iTunes or whatever podcast platform you happen to use. That really helps us out a lot. It gets us exposure and helps people see us and find our message. So thanks a lot again for joining us. And if you're lucky enough to go, enjoy Celebration.